Every morning, you look into a mirror to see yourself, to confirm your own existence. But what if the glass showed you a stranger? What if, day by day, it fed you a new identity, stealing a piece of your own soul each time? This is not a story about a haunted object. This is a warning about the prison of vanity, and the terrifying price of seeing what you were never meant to see. In a small town nestled by the great river Omi, lived a young woman named Zola. Zola was the most beautiful girl in her quarter. Her skin was like polished ebony, her eyes held the spark of the stars, and her smile could disarm the angriest of spirits. But Zola's beauty was not a gift she cherished, it was a weapon she wielded. It was an idol she worshipped. She walked through the market not as a daughter of the community, but as a queen surveying her subjects. She broke the hearts of young men without a second thought, believing their affection was her birthright. Her own mother, Mama Kofi, would warn her. "My child," she would say, her voice crackling with age and wisdom, "a river that is too proud of its own course will never hear the ocean's call. Pride dries the soul faster than the desert sun." But Zola did not listen. Her reflection was her only truth. It was her comfort and her confirmation. Until the day the reflection began to change. The change began with the old mirror. She found it at the back of a dusty curio shop, drawn to its strange carvings. The shopkeeper, an old man with milky, unseeing eyes, had hesitated to sell it to her. "This mirror, child," he whispered, "does not show you what is. It shows you what could be. Or what was." Zola, intrigued by the mystery, bought it for a pittance, seeing only its unique beauty. The first morning, she saw her own face, but her eyes were a different shade of brown. She dismissed it as a trick of the light. The next morning, her face was slightly rounder, her nose a little broader. A flutter of panic rose in her chest, but it was quelled by a strange, addictive curiosity. Who would she see tomorrow? This became her secret ritual. Waking up and rushing to the ancient mirror became more important than her morning prayer. Her own, perfect face in her modern mirror became boring, predictable. The cursed mirror offered a thrilling, daily mystery. She was so captivated by the changing faces, she failed to notice that her own features in the real world were becoming blurred. As if the essence of her was being diluted. She stopped going to the market. She stopped seeing her friends. Her world shrank to the four walls of her room and the surface of that damned glass. Her mother's warnings grew more desperate. "Zola, there is a sickness in you. Your light is fading." But Zola was no longer listening. She was falling in love with a gallery of strangers, each one staring back at her from the prison of the mirror. And then, this morning, everything changed. The face that stared back at her today was not a stranger. It was a face she knew. A face the entire town knew. It was the face of a girl named Chima. A girl who had vanished from her bed without a trace, 2 moons ago. Her face was pale with terror, her eyes pleading, desperate. And as Zola watched, frozen in her seat, the reflection of Chima in the mirror began to scream. No sound escaped the glass, but the scream tore through Zola's soul. She scrambled back from her dressing table, her heart a wild drum against her ribs. The face of Chima, the missing girl, was etched behind her eyes. The terror in that reflection was not a memory, it was a live, burning thing. This was no longer a game. This was no longer a curious diversion. The mirror had shown her a secret, a dark and terrible secret. Why Chima? Why now? The questions swarmed in her mind like angry bees. For the first time, the mirror's magic felt not like a gift, but a chains. She thought of the old shopkeeper's words, "It shows you what could be." Or what was. Was Chima's face a vision of the past? Or a premonition of a fate that could still be changed? Mama Kofi was not just an old woman, she was a living library of the old ways. She knew the language of the spirits and the secrets of the forest. She took one look at Zola's ashen face, at the way her eyes darted as if chased by ghosts, and her heart sank. You have been dancing with a shadow, child. And now it wants to lead. Zola, her vanity shattered by fear, confessed everything. The changing faces. The addiction. The face of Chima. She produced the wrapped mirror and placed it on the floor between them as if it were a venomous snake. Mama Kofi did not touch it. She merely leaned forward, her old eyes seeing deep into the wood's cursed history. This is no mere mirror. This is a Yua Miri, a soul pool. It does not steal your reflection, Zola. It collects souls. It shows you the faces of those it has trapped, or those it soon will. You fed it with your vanity, and it grew strong. Now, it has shown you its appetite. The initial benefit, the thrilling mystery, was a lie. It was the bait in a terrible trap. The consequence was that every time she looked into it, she wasn't just seeing a new face, she was binding another soul to its prison, and erasing a piece of her own. Her fading features were not her imagination, they were the cost. The face of Chima means her soul is not yet free. It is trapped within this glass, and her body lies in a state between life and death. But the mirror is not satisfied. It will hunger for more. And now that it has shown you its secret, it will not let you go. You are its keeper, and its prisoner. That night, sleep was a distant country. The wrapped mirror on her dresser seemed to pulse with a dark light. It called to her. What if you can save her? It seemed to whisper. What if the next face is someone you love? The addiction had mutated from vanity into a desperate need for control. She had to look. She had to know. But it was not Chima she saw this time. The face was another young woman, one she did not recognize. Her eyes were wide with a silent, begging horror. And as Zola watched, unable to look away, a single, black tear of blood rolled down the reflection's cheek. The image held for a long, terrifying moment, and then, it shifted again. This time, it was the face of her young cousin, little Boma, who always followed her around the market with admiring eyes. The message was clear. The mirror was no longer just showing her its collection. It was issuing a threat. It was showing her its next meal. The horror was no longer a passive observation, it was an active hunt, and she was the bait, the keeper, and the accomplice. Her vanity had unlocked a cage, and a predator was now loose, using her eyes to choose its victims. Driven by a terror greater than her pride, Zola knew she had to find Chima. If the soul in the mirror was trapped, perhaps the body was nearby. Perhaps saving one would break the curse. She went to the outskirts of the town, to the dense grove where Chima was last seen, a place where the children were told not to play, for it was said that spirits of the forgotten dwelled there. The pull of the mirror became a physical force, a tugging in her gut. It was leading her. She unwrapped it, her hands shaking, and held it before her like a dowsing rod. The glass did not show her reflection. Instead, it swirled with a dark, misty energy. And then, it cleared, showing not a face, but a path, a view of the grove from the mirror's perspective, highlighting a specific, ancient Irako tree with roots that formed a small, dark hollow. Her blood ran cold. There, almost entirely obscured by leaves and fallen branches, was the entrance to a narrow, hidden well, a forgotten source of water that had long since run dry. The mirror's image zoomed in, into the darkness of the well. And there, at the bottom, lay a still form. It was Chima. She was pale, barely breathing, in a deep, unnatural sleep, but she was alive. Chima. Zola whispered with a breath of horror and hope. Too late, keeper. You looked. You always look. She is mine. And you are almost empty. In that moment, Zola understood the true horror. The mirror wasn't just showing her victims. It was using her attention, her life force, to power its magic, to keep them trapped. Her very gaze was the lock on their prison. Her vanity had been the key, but her continued obsession was the fuel. She was not just a witness. She was the engine of this nightmare. What would she do? To save Chima, she would have to break the connection. But how? Could she destroy the mirror? Would that free the souls, or would it trap them forever? And if she did, would the last shred of her own soul, already faded, simply vanish into nothing? The choice was now terrifyingly simple. She could cling to the fading echo of her beauty, become the mirror's eternal keeper, and watch as it devoured every young girl in the town, starting with her own blood. Or she could break the chain. She could sever the connection that gave the cursed object its power. But the cost would be everything. Mama Kofi's words came back to her, not as a warning, but as an instruction. A river that is too proud of its own course will never hear the ocean's call. Zola had been that proud river. To hear the call now, she had to surrender her course entirely. She had to let the ocean take her. She raised the mirror, not to look, but to speak. Her voice, when it came, was not the proud, melodic tone of the beauty she once was. It was raspy, broken, filled with a regret that tasted like ash. Zola said, "I release you. I release all of you. Forgive me." Then, with a cry that was part anguish, part liberation, she threw the mirror with all her strength into the center of the river. It sailed through the air, the carved faces on its frame seeming to writhe in fury. It hit the dark water with a faint splash. And from the water, 1,000 silent screams seemed to burst forth at once. It was a psychic explosion of freed souls. The light shot upwards, and for a single, breathtaking second, the faces of all the victims. Chima, the unknown women, even the ones from generations past, manifested in the air above the river, their expressions shifting from terror to peace, before dissolving into the starlight. The curse was broken. The souls were free. But the fuel for the mirror's magic had been her own essence. With the connection severed, the borrowed time was over. The price for her vanity was due, in full. Zola was saved, but she was forever changed. The town whispered about the vain beauty who had lost her looks in a mysterious tragedy, a lesson from the spirits. They never knew the true horror, or the true sacrifice. Zola had looked into the abyss of her own soul, and the abyss had looked back, and taken its payment. She had gained her soul's freedom, but at the cost of the face she had once worshipped. She was no longer the most beautiful girl in the town. She was simply Zola. And in that simplicity, she finally found a peace deeper than any reflection could ever offer. But what do you think, dear viewer? Was Zola's punishment too severe? Or was the loss of her beauty a fitting price for the soul she almost condemned? Let me know in the comments below. Her story is a warning. A warning that the things we worship, be it wealth, power, or our own reflection, can become cages. And sometimes, the key to freedom lies not in gaining more, but in surrendering everything. Vanity is a hollow god that consumes its worshippers. True identity is found not in reflection, but in action and sacrifice.